What's up, JVOX? How you guys doing today? I see Jaden's first in the chat. Dude, you're always super quick. I'm glad you got to hop on today, man. So, um, if you're here, let me know by putting in the chat like Jaden. I want to know who's here. I want to know what you've been up to. 'Cause I miss you guys. But trying to think what's new. I'm maybe going to the beach in a few weeks, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm planning out some different games to play with my family, so I think it'll be a good time. But other than that, it's just been a pretty normal week. What's up, Jaden? Glad you're here, man. So I do have a question for you guys before we get started. So um, I need you to give me the best caption for this photo. So here's your photo. It is these little birds just hatched, but one of their buddies, didn't make it. So for you, what do you think is the best caption for that photo? I have some ideas, but I want to hear what you guys are thinking first. 'Cause I feel bad for those little guys. I don't know if you noticed, but this guy, he's got a little tooth, the little pink guy. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you got a good caption for that. But um, yeah, it's a really good picture. So I figured I'd had to share with you guys. But I think I could think of something like, "Oh, hey, Freddie, no." But I don't know if he'd have a name yet. So let me know if you got something. But be clever, be clever. But yeah, JVOX. So it's 4:01. We got people hopping on, and I'm excited to do Ask Away today. For today, we're gonna change topics from the last one that we were on. So the past 2 weeks, we were talking about how we know that Jesus really died on the cross. So for these next 4 weeks, I want to. Oh no, Yoko. Oh man. Oh man. I love it. I love it, Josh. But yeah, so for these next 4 weeks, I want to talk about how we know that Jesus really rose from the dead. So that's a pretty big deal. So I want to have that conversation with you guys. But the Bible calls us to put our trust in Jesus' resurrection, even though we didn't see it take place. It's not like I can throw you in a time machine and carry you back in time to that day, but I can give you reasons to support what you believe without seeing. So this conversation is a big deal, to be confident that Jesus really rose from the dead. Actually, one of my favorite defenders of the Christian faith put it this way. He says, "If Jesus did not rise, our faith is useless, and we fall back in despair." So I don't think we understand how big of a deal the resurrection is. Literally everything, uh, everything we everything we believe in as Christians, it all weighs on, did Jesus really rise from the dead? But he also says, if Jesus rose from the dead, then his claims are true and our Christian hope is sure. So we can have full confidence. We can truly trust and enjoy the good news of Jesus because it's true. So I want to show you that so that you can be confident. So for this conversation, there's 3 facts that point to the truth of the resurrection. All of these facts together let us be confident. It's not like I can go back in time, not like I can go see it taking place, but when all of these facts, when we know that they're true, we can be confident that that the resurrection was true. So the 3 facts are, and we'll take several weeks to talk about them, but number 1, the empty tomb. Number 2, Jesus's appearances to different people after his crucifixion, and the disciples' certainty. So if we know that the tomb was empty, that Jesus showed up to people, and that the disciples were really confident in what in that they saw the risen Jesus, we can be sure that the resurrection is true. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll take a look at those. We're going to spend 4 weeks because it's a really good conversation. But let's go ahead and hop in for this week, guys. So for this week, we're going to talk about our first fact, the empty tomb. So to say that the tomb was empty, it means that there was in the nobody in the tomb. If there was a body in the tomb, it could clearly be seen that Jesus did not rise from the dead. The guys could literally show up to the tomb and be like, "Nope, he dead." But that's actually not what happened. We could be confident. We have at least two reasons to know why the tomb was empty. So the first of those reasons is that in those days, all of the stories said the same thing. So there was the Christians who claimed that Jesus rose from the dead, and that the guards who were protecting the tomb lied and said that the disciples stole the body. And that's the other side. So one side, Jesus rose from the dead. Other side, that the disciples faked Jesus' resurrection, that Jesus didn't really die, but that the disciples took it and they just claimed that Jesus rose from the dead. Even looking outside the Bible, we have a recorded debate from 200 years after Jesus' death, where they had this conversation about did Jesus really rise from the dead, or did his disciples steal the body? So, but both of these stories, that Jesus rose from the dead and that the disciples stole the body, both of these point to the tomb being empty. So no one's claiming that the tomb is still full, and that the body is still there. If the tomb was full, people could literally come up to it and say, nope, he's still dead. There would be nothing to discuss. So with both of these stories saying the same thing, that the tomb was really empty, we could be sure. Just reading my notes real quick, just in case. And we also know that the Jewish leaders could have, if they really wanted to, they could have just found another dead guy who was really beaten up from the crucifixion, all the process that we talked about. They could have just put a dead guy in the tomb, but they didn't. They didn't even do that. So all of those guys who were saying that the disciples stole it, it really does point to the tomb being empty. So for the second reason for why we know that the tomb was empty is because the Bible says that it was found empty by women. So all four gospels mention that the tomb was found empty by women, that the woman come to tell the disciples that the tomb is empty and that Jesus had risen. And actually in the book of Luke, we actually see that the men say that it sounded, in Luke, it says that it sounded like nonsense to the men. So I can imagine one of the men saying like, yo, don't play with me. Jesus is not back. I just watched him die. But these women came to the disciples to tell them this news. And in Jewish society, back in those days, the Jews did not trust the word of a woman. They considered it to be almost worthless. In a case where they needed investigation and needed to ask witnesses, they would not allow women to be the witnesses unless there was absolutely no men available to testify. So if the disciples had stolen the Bible, like the unbelievers were saying, and they decided to lie that Jesus rose from the dead, they wouldn't have told that woman found the tomb empty. This would have made their claim unconvincing. Because most people would have been hesitant to accept what they had to say. If they were lying, they would have most likely used a man's story, like Peter saw the risen, that Peter found the tomb empty, or James found the tomb empty. But since women are the main witnesses to the empty tomb, it's actually kind of awkward for them. It's actually kind of embarrassing. But they choose to write exactly what happened in the Bible. They choose to be faithful and not lie or skew any of the story. But even though this was embarrassing, even though this was awkward, they chose to write the truth. So that is how we know that the tomb was empty. Next week we will look at some of the opposing viewpoints. Some unbelievers say that no, it really truly wasn't empty. So we're going to look at a couple of those. It was too much to share in this video, but we're going to go ahead and carry that conversation next week and see what they have to say. And I'm going to show you how their opposing viewpoints actually don't work out. So that's what I got for you guys today on this conversation. We know that the tomb is empty because there was two stories pointing to the tomb being empty, and the Bible records that the tomb was found empty by women. So that's what I got for you, JVOX. So if you have any questions for me, any of them that you want me to answer live now, let me know. Make sure to put it in the chat box now so I can see. Because I'd like to, if you have a question that's been on your mind, one that you just thought of right now, go ahead and put that in the chat because I'd like to take a few minutes to see if I can answer it. If I can't answer it, I'll actually look into it and answer it next week because I know how valuable it is to find answers. If I didn't go looking for answers when I had questions, I would have maybe walked away from God. I'm so glad that I took the time to go looking. So if nobody has questions, I do have a popular one that JVOXers have asked in the past that may be exactly what you may be thinking. So I'll give you like 2 seconds. If you got one, make sure to put it in there. But I'm just glad to be here with you guys, to be able to answer your questions. But I'm going to take that as a no. If you have one, make sure to submit it because I'd love to answer it next week or at the end of this. But another question that you may have, or maybe even your friends may have, is that how could a loving God send good people to hell? I'll say it one more time. How could a loving God send good people to hell? So the topic of hell is a very touchy topic, but it's a real question with a lot of weight. And as I address this question, as I kind of tackle it, I want to be careful to explain it well. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to define who good people are. You may be wondering, is there really such a thing as a good person? Well, the Bible actually says no. When the Bible describes a good person, it's not like they get to weigh all the right and all the wrong that they've done, and the right kind of is heavier than the wrong. But when it talks about a good person, it's talking about someone. In order to be good, the Bible defines that as somebody who's done no wrong, someone who is sinless. But we see in Mark chapter 7, verse 15, it tells us that our hearts are corrupt and our hearts are filled with evil. And in Romans 3:10, it tells us that no one is good, not even one. And it's not that just some people are really evil. Like think of like the Nazis who exterminated a lot of the Jews. But even if we look in our own hearts, we truly are not good. We don't do what is right. So God doesn't send good people to hell because nobody is truly good. But the next question that we have to ask is, does God really send anybody to hell? And the answer to that is no. We just talked about how no one is really good, that we all do what is evil. And we know that God is holy, that he must be set apart from evil. So when people choose to do evil instead of living life God's way, God can't allow evil people to be close to him. So since people choose to live life without God now, they are choosing to live life without God later. They're choosing to live evil now, so that the result of that is that they won't be able to spend eternity with God. Since God is holy, since God is just, God can't just ignore their sin. But God really does not enjoy seeing people go to hell. In Ezekiel 18 verse 23, it says, this is God talking. He says, "Do you think that I like seeing wicked people die? Says the sovereign Lord. Of course not. I want them to turn from their wicked ways and live." So we see here, right straight from God's mouth, he says, "I don't like seeing evil people do evil. I like seeing people turn away from that, turn toward me, and live with the right way, live the way I call them to." But since the beginning, since he created this world and his people, he has wanted to enjoy a close relationship with his people. He made a way to pay for our sins by sending Jesus, who was both the only good human as well as God. He is God. So he ended up dying on the cross and being raised from the dead, so that he could pay for our sins. And all we have to do is trust what Jesus did and choose to let him lead our lives. So with that, we see that there are truly no good people, and that God doesn't send anybody to hell. It's our choice. We choose to do it to evil, and because God is holy, it must be set apart. We can't be near him. So uh, God can't be close to us. So if you've chosen to trust in Jesus and let him lead your life, you could be excited. You could enjoy God now and spend eternity with him later. That's amazing news for all of us. But we also need to remember that we are surrounded by people who are missing out on what we have. So make sure after hearing this, that people choosing evil now are choosing to be apart from God later. Uh, be praying for your friends who don't know Jesus. Uh, be praying that God would move in their hearts. Be praying for God to give you an opportunity to share the good news about Jesus, so that they can, so that Jesus's goodness, Jesus's righteousness, Jesus's blood can cover their sins, and that they could enter into a relationship with Jesus and spend eternity with him later and live a life of purpose now. So, I wanted to answer that for you guys today. I hope that helps. I hope that reminds you of the good news that you get to rest in, but also remind you to share with your friends. So JVOX, thank you for tuning in to Ask Away today. I'm so glad you got to tune in. I hope it helped you. If it did, let me know in the chat. I'd love to know if you liked what we had to say. But also make sure to, if you want to share this with some of your friends, make sure to do it, and continue to tune in to JVOX the rest of the week. Aiden and I are doing soap tomorrow, so that's going to be good. And I got something new for you guys next week, next Wednesday. So make sure to tune in all week. Make sure to find out what's happening, because it's going to be good. So I will see you guys tomorrow. If you got questions, put them down below. So bye, JVOX.